Hello, so this is our final installation for Phonetics 2, and this will just be a fairly rapid explanation of what you can find on page 37 and 38 in the brochure under the title "The Study of Double Vowels." You can probably see this here, and these are also referred to as digraphs. So this is sort of going farther than what we've traditionally seen for, let's say, long and short values of a letter, or if you remember what we say, sort of when we study the letter A, we start with a short value, start with a long value, we start with the R-colored value, and then we move on to look at sort of alternate pronunciations. If you remember, when we looked at A, we looked at what we call bath lengthening, the fact that we have A plus TH, it would be bath in British English. So we sort of look at more details. So even when we look at exceptions, we're always focused on the pronunciation of individual letters. But here what we're going to do is we're going to really look at the way that what we call digraphs or double letters are pronounced, right? And here, for example, we can see we have an example of AI, A-A-Y, A-I, E-I, and E-Y, right? So the thing that you should be aware of is it's not just because we have two letters that we have two sounds, and that can kind of sort of confuse you. Sometimes we have two letters, and it can correspond with, let's say, a diphthong. If you remember, a diphthong is two sounds. If I say something like cake, right? Okay. Notice we only have one letter A, and that one letter is two sounds. A. I can write the long value for A, which is, I'll write the symbol. The long value for A, it's this. So in this case, we have one letter, two sounds. But we can also have the case where we have two letters, right? And you might just think that automatically when we have two letters, we have two sounds, but it's not always the case. And that is, I would say, that's the primary difficulty with this. So that's sort of the common theme that I'm going to talk about when we look at this. To say, where do we have sort of a single sound? Where do we have a double sound, right? And if we have two sounds, it's most often going to be a diphthong, right? And that's what we see when we look at the top of page 37. All right, we'll try to do it like this. It's not so easy to get through it. And so we have these digraphs that are AI, AY, EI, and EY, right? So, and the idea is very often they're pronounced just, as it kind of looks like it, they're going to be pronounced as the long value for A. Paid, day, vain, they. No problem, right? But sometimes, there will be exceptions where they're pronounced as the long value for I, as in height and I, right? Those are exceptions. And in other cases, they can be, and these are often sort of foreign sounding, right? Pronounced as the long value for E. Keith, Key, Neil, Key, that's a little bit strange, right? That was when you add a key, and C's, right? And notice this is oftentimes we have the EI, that's going to be for the EI variation. So that's something to be aware of. And then sometimes it can be just a single short sound, and this is why this is hard to say, he said. And just think about it, what he said is the same as Fred, right? So it's simply the short value for E. It is pronounced no differently than the word that has the letter E, right? That's sort of the difficulty here. Said, says. Okay. So we're going to look at other examples of that. Here we have EA, EE, IE. And very often, most often, we're just going to have the same thing as the long value for E, as when we have T, team, chief, no problem. And there's a couple exceptions here. When we have this EA pronounced as the long value for A, as in break, great, steak, yay. There's a poet, Yeats, you might have heard of him. That's a similar, that is considered to be sort of it's often referred to as a foreign value, okay? And also another thing to be aware of is that especially for the EA, we have the short value for E, bread, breadth. But I think you're fairly familiar with that, right? Another thing to be aware of is when we have this IE that's stressed that when we have a final open vowel, right? And they say in final position means that there's no consonant after IE, and that'll be, and you're familiar with words like this, pie and die. So I'm not going to go into much more detail about that. I think that doesn't really lead to any great problems. Now we have OA and OE. I think you're also familiar with this. This is sort of an alternate spelling for the long value of O. Goal and toe is that's just a reminder. That's the long value of toe. So that's I think you're fairly familiar with that. I don't need to insist on that too much. But beware of exceptions like shoe, broad, right? Broad, right? OAD. And of course, does, we have does being used as an auxiliary verb, so it's likely to have exceptions. All right. So moving along, we're going to look at an alternate spelling for the long value of u. Right. That's basically the way to think of these as alternate spellings for different values. Right. So we have this EU, EW, UE, UI. And if you remember, we looked at this oo sound, which is the long value for oo. Right. Remember, we said it kind of extends and you sort of round your lips more as you go along. So you're going to have, such words as feud, new, clue. We don't just say feud, we say feud, new, clue, and suit. So it isn't a diphthong, but as these spellings reflect, they do reflect something about the sound, that it kind of extends as you pronounce this word. And so when you pronounce these, really try to extend them, give them their full weight. And then there's a few of these are really difficult exceptions that you need to be aware of. Is that it can also be pronounced as the long value for O. As you can see here, when we say, for example, I sew, you might think it would be sue, but sew, that would be coudre, right? And so these are all. There would be sort of the infinitive for sew, the past, simple past, sewed, and then sewn, right? So that would be the past participle, right? So that's not so obvious. And then with UI, right? It will be exceptionally be it, as in built in building. So that, I think I don't need to say much more about that. Now, as far as OO, you're probably aware of the fact that it is pronounced exactly in the same way as the long value for you. So here we have. Hopefully you can see it here. We can have food and moon. I don't need to say much more about that. And that there are a few exceptions. One being that we have, these are just rare words that you might have encountered if you ever read a novel, right? So one is going to be brooch, right? And that is something that you wear on your neck, right? And also here we can have some words that end in either K, T, especially I would say K and T, right? And sometimes D, where instead of having the long value for U, right, okay, we're going to have sort of the alternate short value for U, which would be I would say I'm sorry, which you can see here, right? So that means we say book, brook. So it might help you to identify these if you see that we have a K after here, right? So that it's still an exception, but there's a lot of them with this, right? And notice we have D, good, hood. And then we can notice at the end we have foot. We could also have soot, which would be les cendres, right? So ones that end in there. And then also to be aware of, these are words that are, that you, fortunately there's very common words, but you may have encountered. There is that third possibility of you pronouncing these, blood or flood, just as a short value for you. But that's, of course, just a few exceptions. So now we're going to look on the digraph OU, and down here at the very bottom of the page 37, we have OU and OW, which we're going to pronounce as the diphthong ow. So it'll be out and cloud, right? So that here it's in a sense sort of logical. We have the digraph reflects the fact that we have our diphthong, right? And we've actually encountered this. These are sort of the basic values for the diphthong. But beware of the fact that with OU, that these may be expressed as the long value for O, right? So bowl, crow, dough for OU, and very often with the GH, this can occur, okay? And so on, right? And then finally, be aware of these words with OUGHT, also an AUGHT, right? It's important to note that here we have these kind of words like ought, brought. I'm saying this in British accent would be a ought, brought, fought. Notice here it's very what the real difficulty with these words is, something we've just seen before, is that we have lots of letters, right? And we only have one sound, right? Ooh, right? That's not a digraph. So that's the difficulty. You might be tempted to say something like out or brout, but it's just oat, brout. And with these these ou or aught, or augh or ough type words, often with the t afterwards, they're almost always going to have this R colored value for O, right? And now we're going to move on. We're going to finish up this section with other. There's a lot of other values for this OU digraph. These are ones that we sort of associate with French, like groupe rouge. So we have a sort of something that's sort of similar to the pronunciation we'll have in French, and that is sort of assimilated as the long value for U, right? U. U is not really groupe, but it's pretty close. So that's what happens. Sometimes with modals, we're going to have that alternate short value for U. Could, should, would, right? Okay. Also, sometimes we're going to have the short value for U, like rough, tough, and this is often when we have the OUGH. So be aware of that OUGH without the T. Sometimes we can have that short value for U, and then cough is just a significant exception. You might not think of it, but we don't say cough. Once again, really be aware that that's just the short value for O. There's not going to be any other sounds. Okay. Now this is just a reminder, and finally, it's just there's not much to say about this OI and OY. You already know that this is the standard way that we pronounce this oi diphthong, right? Oil boy. So just be aware that it can be OI or OY. I don't need to say much more about this. Very often the OY was what you will encounter at the end of a word, right? And then finally we have the AUAW diphthong, which is almost always going to be pronounced as a single sound, right? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said diphthong. I should have said digraph. These two letters will almost always be pronounced O, which is a single sound. So if you have difficulty saying a word like, for example, cows, you want to say cools, one sound. In American English, cause, but it's not cows. It's only, it's a single sound, two letters. I would say that's something to really pay attention to here, because these are really common words like because, right? Saw, sow. So really be aware of that. Think of yourself, okay, this is a digraph, only one sound, okay? There are significant exceptions, but of course these are pretty rare. I mean, it's much more important to be able to say words like cause and saw. So the exceptions will be to gauge, right? Jauger, and that's jauger. It's just as rare as jauger en français. So it's not the color, mauve. Okay, fine. Notice here we have the influence of French, and then we have words like aunt, draft, loft. These are fairly exceptional. Just be aware of them. But if you're that you're really at the fine tuning stage, the thing to really be aware of is the rule, right, as opposed to the exceptions. So that is all, and that is our final installation for phonetics. I will be sending you an email shortly, giving you the test that I expect you to take